One of the most important novels of the last 20 years is Mistborn. Not only did this book launch the career of Brandon Sanderson, one of the top-selling fantasy authors in the world today, it also changed the fantasy genre itself. Mistborn proved that fantasy stories could have a complex magic system and still be wildly popular. Fantasy was no longer just for the super nerds, it was for the nerd in all of us. These days, Mistborn is a common starting place for people who want to try reading fantasy for the first time, and I wholeheartedly recommend it for that reason, whether you're new to the genre or a fantasy veteran. But today's question is, what do you read next? Because we don't want you to stop with just one book. There are so many fantastic fantasies out there waiting just for you. So today we're going to look at 10 fantasy books you should read if you liked Mistborn, and my goal today is to try to convince you to read at least one of them. Hi, I'm a YouTuber known simply as The Book Guy, and when I read Mistborn over 10 years ago, I fell in love with reading and with fantasy, so much so that it's currently kind of my thing. That's why the team over at Readwise invited me here today to share with you some of my favorite books. But let me be clear, I'm not just here to force my favorite books on you, I want to help you find your favorite books. One thing I need to clarify before we look at the 10 books of the day: fantasy is a weird genre because it actually steals from every other genre, much like science fiction does too. A fantasy book might have elves, wizards, and dragons, and then randomly throw in a romance plotline, or crime, mystery, thriller, a political drama, or period piece. Fantasy can be all of those things at once. So that does make it tricky to find a book similar to the one you just read, because you don't know what extra flavor the new book is going to have. For example, Mistborn is a high fantasy, meaning it takes place on another world entirely, and has a strong emphasis on a magic system, but it also combines a romance plotline, a heist plotline, and a mystery plotline, with big surprises. When I read Mistborn, I personally loved the magic system and the mystery. When my wife read it, she loved the romance, and you might have loved something entirely different as well. So as we go through our 10 books today, we're going to highlight exactly what they have in common with Mistborn. That way you can choose which parts of the fantasy appeal most to you. Sound good? Alright, let's begin at number 1. We have The Lies of Loch Lamora. This is another story about a gang of thieves with an elaborate plan, but this time they're running a long con to rob the rich and give to themselves, because it's fun. In the crime-filled city of Camor, Loch Lamora and the Gentleman's Bastards run some clever cons using accents, aliases, and fake personas to charm people out of their money. However, they have to avoid the lawmen and a powerful crime lord called Kappa Basavi who doesn't want them encroaching on his territory. To make things worse, a mysterious figure known only as the Grey King has just come to town. This guy might be wielding some powerful magic that could throw the entire city into chaos. This book is ideal for people who really liked the heist plotline of Mistborn. Plus, our heroes are not exactly noble characters, but they are fiercely loyal to each other and the best of friends. This is a classic thief with the heart of gold story. If you enjoyed this book, there are 2 more in the series so far, although I do feel morally obligated to warn you, this is one of those infamously unfinished series. Book 3 came out in 2013, and we're still waiting for Book 4, and there's no official reason why there's been a delay. But I still think every fantasy fan should try this book at some point. It's just that good. Alright, at number 2, we have Promise of Blood. This book is special because the author, Brian McKellen, was actually a student of Brandon Sanderson. If you didn't know, Sanderson teaches a creative writing course, which Brian once attended. So his books represent quite literally the next generation of fantasy authors. Promise of Blood has all sorts of magic. At one extreme, we have powerful wizards with big spells, and at the other end, we have people with knacks with one small gift. Then firmly in the middle are the powder mages, those who can control kinetic energy. You give a powder mage a gun and some ammunition and they become lethal, but they are very much the underdog in this situation. This story begins as all good stories do, with the guillotine. The king has been beheaded and power is being returned to the people after a violent and bloody revolution. However, the old wizards don't want to let go of their power. So this is a story about a general, a detective, and a talented marksman as they try to establish a new order in their country. This book answers the question of what happens after the revolution. It's similar to the later books in the Mistborn trilogy in that regard, and it also has a strong focus on magic systems. system. If you enjoy this book, there are 6 Powder Mage books in total, split into 2 trilogies. And while I do recommend the first one, I've got to say, this is a series that keeps getting better with every new entry. Now, speaking of the next generation of fantasy authors, here's another one who was also inspired by Mistborn. At number 3, we have The Shadow of What Was Lost by Australian author James Islington. In this book, magicians once tried to rise up and take over the world, but failed. Now magicians are hated by everyone and bound by strict and unjust magical laws. A student mage, Davian, discovers he wields augur magic, a power so dangerous it has been completely outlawed, because augur magic can mess with the mind and with time. This is a fantasy that plays around with time, and yes, there is some good old-fashioned time travel, but it's so much more than that. Some augurs can see into the future. Others can send messages across time in either direction, and some characters are so old that they remember the distant past. This story messes with past, present, and future, and has them all overlapping in one brilliant puzzle. That said, as much as I do recommend Book 1 and think it stands well on its own, a lot of the time travel mysteries don't get revealed until Book 2 and even Book 3. The joy of reading this series is seeing all the puzzle pieces come together. So it's a lot like Mistborn, with a strong emphasis on magic system and a lot of mystery with big surprises. So far we've looked at 2 fantasy books from the new generation of authors inspired by Mistborn, but now let's look at 2 from the older generation, those that inspired Mistborn in turn. At number 4, we have The Eye of the World from The Wheel of Time. This is quite literally one of the greatest fantasy series ever written. Over 100 million copies sold and widely loved. But if you're gonna read it in the year of 2025, there are 2 things you gotta know about it. First, it's big. At a whopping 14 novels and 1 prequel, and the average page length is 896 pages. So as much as I love this series, I have to recommend it for people with strong reading muscles. If you're not there yet, that's okay, but this might be a series you come back to. Second, the popular TV series The Wheel of Time, which was cancelled too early, tells a very different story. The show was critically acclaimed, but they changed the plot a lot to make it more like Game of Thrones, so the books aren't as violent and the characters don't argue with each other all the time. Anyway, the book itself is about a hero of the past age known as the Dragon, who tried to destroy evil forever and failed spectacularly, causing an apocalypse that nearly broke the world. Now his soul has been reborn in the current age, and prophecy says that he will once again try to save the world. But will he succeed this time or destroy it for good? This series has so much in common with Mistborn that Brandon Sanderson was actually hired to finish the series when the original author Robert Jordan passed away. And much like Mistborn, it is a world full of magic. However, only women can touch the one power, because if a man touches it, he begins to go insane. This is a dangerous but oddly beautiful magic system that is a joy to explore. The first book, The Eye of the World, is a great example of the quality of writing, and it will help you decide if you want to continue on with the series. Another series that inspired Mistborn is Assassin's Apprentice from the realm of the Elderlings. Meet young Fitz, a bastard child of the royal family. Fitz's very existence is a threat to the throne, but the king shows the only mercy he can and appoints him to the position of royal assassin. Now Fitz removes the enemies to the throne and protects the Farseer family, the same family he can never be a part of. The Farseers have incredible telepathic magic, able to see across great distances and even influence minds. Yet Fitz has his own strange magic inherited from his mysterious mother, magic that gives him a certain affinity with animals. A magic long outlawed by the Farseers, who may consider Fitz too dangerous to keep around if they discovered the truth. Yet even the mighty Farseers may be no match for the red ships invading their land, red ships that have their own terrifying magic. This series is incredibly underrated, despite being so good. It's a lot like Mistborn, with a big emphasis on magic and mystery. But you should also know upfront, this is not a fantasy series with non-stop action scenes. In fact, it's a little bit slower, because this is a character drama with beautiful, deep writing and some of the best character writing I've ever seen. This will break your heart. If that sounds like something you're into, you should give this one a try. If you enjoyed the first book, there are 2 more books in the Farseer trilogy, and there are a total of 5 sub-series all within the world of the realm of the Elderlings. These are also really big, thick books, but unlike the Wheel of Time, they are split up into smaller trilogies, so you don't have to commit to reading the full series. Alright, now let's look at 2 more books that are significantly darker, more violent, and more adult. The first of which is the 5th season from the Broken Earth trilogy. This is a post-apocalyptic world, and it's pretty damn dark. In this world, the Earth is literally broken. Every few years, another extinction-level event devastates the fragile remnants of humanity. Great earthquakes tear up the ground, and giant supervolcanoes blacken the sky. There is magic in this world. People wield the terrifying power of orogeny, the energy generated from the movement of land masses. This magic is capable of causing massive earthquakes and triggering more extinction-level events. That's why people hate orogenes and will often murder them on sight with extreme prejudice. This story is about a middle-aged woman of color trying to save her daughter. Her husband found out that their 2 children were orogenes and literally murdered one of them and kidnapped the other. Yes, that's how dark this story gets right from page 1. So we follow a mother trying to cross a broken earth trying to find her daughter. This story echoes Mistborn's exploration of magic and caste systems and how it leads to oppression and revolution. This trilogy won the prestigious Hugo Award for every single entry in the series, the only time in history that's ever been done. So while it may be a very dark book, it also will have some of the best literary writing you've ever seen. Alright, continuing with the dark books, we have The Blade itself. This is another epic high fantasy on another world, but a much more violent and brutal world. All of our main characters are imperfect people, filled with flaws, selfishness, and even cruelty. The first book tells the story of 3 people: a selfish noble brat, a vicious barbarian, and a crippled torturer, who are all chosen by a wizard to help save their realm from destruction. This book belongs to a subgenre of fantasy called grimdark, and grimdark is not all about blood and guts, though it does have that too. It's about realistic stories. Stories that don't have Hollywood gloss or plot armor to protect their characters, where the hero doesn't always win. Instead, the world is filled with selfish and incompetent people, and life is messy and unpredictable. This is a fascinating way to tell a story, because the character you like might die at any moment. There is no plot armor, there's no guaranteed success at the end of the story, and fight scenes can be shockingly quick. This is a book that will challenge many of the story tropes you know in many surprising ways. This book shares with Mistborn's fantasy and mystery plotlines. It's also the first book in a trilogy. If you find you want even more after that, there are now a total of 10 books in the world of the First Law. Now, for our final 3 entries, we're going to continue looking at fantasy books in slightly different subgenres of fantasy, so consider these gateways to whole new worlds of stories. First, we have Six of Crows, a young adult fantasy. Now, I'll be honest with you, sometimes in the fantasy community, people can be extra critical and judgmental of young adult books. Just ignore all of that. Young adult books are meant to be simpler, full of familiar tropes, and even a healthy dose of teenage angst. If that's not your thing, that's okay, but if it is, you should try Six of Crows. This book is part of the Grisha verse, where Grisha is the name of the people who can use magic. The story is about assembling a team of teenage outlaws to break into the most secure fortress in the world. All 6 members of our team are necessary, yet they have to learn to trust each other if they are going to succeed. That could be difficult, considering we have a Grisha on the team and a religious zealot who believes all Grisha should be put to death. What makes this book special is how we get to know each of the 6 team members, or crows as they call themselves. We have an acrobat, a demolitions expert, a marksman, the man on the inside, a magician, and a leader with the master plan. Each of them has their own story on why they're doing this. While it may not be as complex as Mistborn since it's for younger audiences, it's still a very fun read. This book is part of a duology followed by Crooked Kingdom, and there are 7 books in total in the Grishaverse if you want to read more after that. There was also the all-too-brief TV show Shadow and Bone. Seriously, what's with fantasy shows getting cancelled too soon? Moving on, our next entry is Jade City. This is an epic Godfather-esque story of two crime families who use magic to fight each other. This book combines martial arts stories with a mob drama, and it's set in a more modern world inspired by 1940s Hong Kong, although it is an entirely fictional world. The story is about the Call family who rule the No Peak clan, who act with honor and enforce strict, efficient justice. And they fight against the more powerful Mountain clan, who have no honor and will do whatever they think is necessary to win. The two clans fight with Jade. Wearing Jade stones gives the user greater speed and strength, making them incredible martial artists. But using too much Jade can turn you into a drug addict, where withdrawal can be lethal. The author herself, Fonda Lee, holds a black belt in martial arts, enabling her to write some incredibly lifelike action scenes. Where the story gets even more brilliant is how the rivalry between the two clans encompasses all areas of life. They don't just fight with magic, they use business deals, politicians, and make films about Jade to change public opinion in their favor. This is one of the most realistic depictions I've ever seen of how magic would truly shape every aspect of the world around us. And like any good story about a crime family, be prepared to love and hate some of these characters. This story shares Mistborn's fantasy, its magic, and, in a way, its heist plotline, since much of the story are about the elaborate plans the clans have to outmaneuver each other. Our final entry for today is another urban fantasy, but this one's set in the real world, specifically Chicago. I'm talking, of course, about Stormfront from the Dresden Files. I always recommend these books to people who want to try fantasy for the first time because it's such an easy gateway into the genre because it's got one foot in the real world already, and established fantasy fans will find plenty to love here as well. Harry Dresden is a wizard and private investigator for hire working in Chicago, solving crimes of a more supernatural nature. These are fantasy books with a lot more crime, mystery, and a whole lot of plot twists. It's got just about every urban monster in here somewhere, from vampires to werewolves to fallen angels to Bigfoot. Each book is also short and sweet and very funny, making them great easy reads. The first book begins when Harry is brought in to consult for the police after two people are found brutally murdered by black magic. This means that there is a dark mage out there and Harry has to find them before they kill again. The series is a lot like Mistborn because of its big mystery and surprises, but it's also got a very solid magic system. In this story, all players have to follow the laws of magic. They have to work hard and be smarter in order to use it, which makes for some very enjoyable storytelling. Alright, we have covered all 10 books you should try if you liked Mistborn. If you haven't picked one yet, let's just quickly review your options. We have The Lies of Loch Lamora, Promise of Blood, The Shadow of What Was Lost, The Eye of the World, Assassin's Apprentice, The Fifth Season, The Blade Itself, Six of Crows, Jade City, and Stormfront. I hope you'll take the plunge and try one of these fantastic books today. Let me know which one you decided, and good luck on your next reading journey. Of course, there are so many other great books I could have mentioned. I know I completely ignored Game of Thrones and Name of the Wind just to name some examples. What a crime! But I had to stop the list at 10, otherwise I would talk about books all day. So if you think there's another fantasy book that's got a lot in common with Mistborn that I should have mentioned, let me know in the comments below. And tell me if you'd like to see more recommendation videos like this one. Until then, I'm the Book Guy, and I hope you enjoy a good book today. Bye!